Did someone tell you somewhere along the line that you should meditate and then you tried it and your mind wandered and you're like, I can't do this. This isn't for me. Well, you're in luck because today's episode we are talking about Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, the awesome book by Mr. Suzuki. This is the Existential Stoic Podcast. I'm Randy. That's Danny. What's going on, Danny?
What's up, man? It's funny you mentioned that because so many people talk about like when the mindfulness like blew up, in like the West and like the whole idea of meditation, and then they never mention to people that it takes a long time. Like it took me years before I could like sit down and not have like not get frustrated, I mean, because it does. And I
Hmm.
think people don't realize that they expect results right away and it's not going to work. And that's where this book I think is killer because it's like it's short, one,
Hmm.
and it's like a really accessible introduction into like I would say like core principles, ideas, and concepts related to Zen Buddhism.
Yeah, it breaks it down so easily. And I agree with what you were saying there with like most people. I mean, that's what you hear from most people. They're like, "Do you meditate?" "Oh, yeah, I tried that, but my mind was just going crazy." And it's like, "Yeah, that's meditating." That's like
That's
that's
what
it. You
happens.
just sit with it and let it do that. Yeah. So, we decided we will talk about this today to figure out some of the key topics.
Yeah, maybe help you guys with if you ever decide to meditate. I do think this is one of the best books, and one of the things I really like about it is that the non-attachment thing, the letting go, is really important too. Like when you sit down, right? Because
Hmm.
thoughts come, you cannot help it, and
Yep.
our impulse, and this is one of the things they talk about too, right? Is our impulse is to grab on and latch onto those thoughts. Like
Yeah.
you sit down to meditate, maybe you're stressed about something, that thought comes up, and you immediately start like ruminating on it, and then you're on this whole train of thought. So what are you
Well,
supposed to do?
well,
I
this
guess
is
that's
cool.
the
Great,
question.
great segue. So
Thank
they
you.
one of the things they talk I know, right? One of the things they talk about
Habits
early
king.
on in the book, probably one of the first few chapters, was like it's not about achieving enlightenment or getting somewhere. It's just about fully engaging in what is right now, which is basically
Well,
sitting properly and breathing and noticing your
yeah.
breathing.
And being just aware of the moment, right? And I think they always, Buddhists always say it's not about achieving enlightenment. And I think people don't, and one of the reasons why is exactly that, right? Is that if you're worried about achieving enlightenment, you're going to be attached to that idea, which
Hmm.
means you're not going to be present. There's no way because you're worried about this goal or this made up goal, and you don't even know what that goal looks like.
Hmm.
So, so there's no way that's going to get in the way of your progress.
Well, also, like it's kind of a logical fallacy that if you don't have enlightenment now, there's nothing that you can do to actually get it. But
Yeah.
all that it is recognizing that you already have enlightenment now. And but you're not gonna
Yeah, a lot of
get
it,
there.
a lot of this stuff is just like the inversion of the negative.
Hmm.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it just talks a lot early on about like the right posture, the right breathing, the right mind. But I got it because I read it a long time ago and then I just listened to it again on YouTube. And I was just blown away how much it literally just stresses sit with the right posture
Yeah.
and breathe. And that's it. And when you're sitting, you just sit. And that's it.
Yeah.
Simple. Just do it.
And I think that's the number one. I think if I remember correctly, because I've read it numerous times. It was a while ago. Correct me if I'm wrong. Since you just listen to it, but like seating is their main approach in this, right? The
Hmm.
sitting meditation.
Oh, absolutely.
And there is, I think, if I remember correctly from Buddhism, there's three. It's laying down, walking, and
Hmm.
sitting are like the
Hmm.
three main natural
And standing,
postures.
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, and standing. Sorry, yeah, they're like the natural postures.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, Zen tends to focus on the seating. But yeah, you're right. It is. It's all about that posture being correct. Because then I think part of that too is you're also present, right? If you're thinking about how your body's actually like positioned,
Hmm.
how you're actually sitting, your posture and all, that's all going to make you more present in the moment. So
Hmm.
it's a good technique, like similar to a lot of people when they first start meditating, they'll say to count, like for your in breath
Yeah.
you're holding it and then your out breath. And the idea is to like that counting's supposed to make you more focused on the actual act of breathing
Hmm.
and not the other way around, right?
Yeah, and there's a whole bunch of like little things you can glean from it when you listen to it or read it. Like he talks about the lotus posture with which a lot of people probably can't do, but it's kind of crazy because it's like a little symbol of kind of our interaction with the universe where our legs when they're crossed like that, they're not two and they're not one, which is kind of
Yeah.
everything, not two and not one. But yeah. So,
Yeah, it's
how about some
awesome.
other insights? Control by letting go. True control arises when we stop trying to control everything. Acceptance leads to stability. Man, how about that one?
I know, right? I think this is where we all struggle.
Hmm.
But there's a big part of it, right? Because, like, I mean, the whole idea of meditation, I think, and I think they mentioned this in Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, but this is also just like in Buddhism too. They talk about it as like untying the psychic knots, right? It's like working through these problems in our own psyche that are causing us not to be present and not to be part of the world, but causing us to be distracted, things like that. And I always
Hmm.
like that idea because I think that's where so many people have depression, anxiety, and stuff, is because we have these problems that we haven't worked out or we haven't learned how to let go of.
Hmm.
And meditation can be hugely powerful for that because you start to see like what thoughts do come up a lot. And then afterwards, and this is the idea, right? Like when you're meditating, you let them go. But
Yeah,
afterwards, you can think about them and think about like, why did that thought come up? What's bothering me? Where did it maybe come from? All this
yeah.
stuff. And eventually over time, you work out this stuff and it becomes, you know, theoretically you become healthier.
And it's crazy. We treat ourselves terribly when we're doing all this stuff. Like
Oh
stuff that we would
God,
never
yeah.
say to a friend, we say to ourselves. And that's another thing they talk about, discipline without force. So Zen discipline is gentle but firm, a natural expression of love and commitment, not harsh self-control. Which is, it makes sense because you're not going to hate yourself into loving yourself.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I used to teach, there's a social philosophy class. I cover this article and it was a Buddhist idea on rights, and it was like a Buddhist perspective on rights. And they were talking about how like, the West, we have this very hard notion of rights where it's like you have the right or you don't, right? And it's like so it's a this or that kind of thing. And in Buddhism, he talks about how it's like softer, and that's like his words for it, which basically meant that like your rights tend to be more aligned, like they had to do more with like situation, relationships. So they changed a lot. They weren't like these definite yes or no things. And I think that's something in the West where we struggle with, and that's why we have so many mental problems and difficulties like trying to control everything because everything is absolute. Instead of
Hmm.
letting things be flexible or change with the situation, things like that, we
Hmm.
expect them to be always the same.
Well, that's like the cause of all wars and everything and arguments and stuff. The truth. But the truth is kind of flexible. It's like I remember
Yeah.
when I was studying Buddhism back a while ago, they had like the Eightfold Path maybe, where they talk about right
The
effort
Noble
and
Eightfold
different things
Path.
like
Yeah.
that. And it's
Yes.
it's challenging because like right effort depends upon the situation, like you were saying. And yeah,
Yeah.
and right speech depends upon the situation. All these different things, and it makes life a lot more complicated than just a simple answer.
Well, it's funny. It's very similarly what Aristotle said about virtue too, which he said, doing the right thing at the right time for the right reason, right? So
Mm.
it's wholly dependent on situation. It's wholly dependent on who you're around. Like all those things matter
Hmm.
to do the right thing. And same for Buddhism, like that noble eightfold path. It's very difficult then, especially for like us, where like this expectation of everything should be the same all the time.
Yeah,
You have to kind of break that expectation in order to understand this. But I think it does give you a much better sense of like, what's required from you at all times, because I think we all put a lot of pressure on us too, because we expect ourselves to be like, you know, these
perfect.
Uber people all the time. Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's like, maybe in some situations, maybe like this is a situation where I don't need to be front and center. Maybe I can be
yeah.
in the back, and just chilling or whatever.
I,
Like,
I heard an old guy
yeah.
talking the other day, and he was saying how he's caused himself so much pain throughout his life because he was trying to be like a 10 out of 10. And then when he looks back, he's like, most of the time I was pretty much just around a 5 and sometimes a little bit higher, sometimes a little bit
Yeah.
lower. He's like, I could have saved myself so much pain and if I would have just realized, 5's okay.
But dude, that's everybody.
Yeah.
I think everybody, if you look at like their whole life, they hover around five probably. They
Hmm.
might be they might be tens in one or two aspects, but
Oh, if
most of
they're
it they're definitely
lucky.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they're lucky. Yeah.
Hmm.
I also like the idea of like that's expressed in Zen Mind Beginner's Mind, continuous practice. And
Mm,
this I think
yeah.
is important because I think there's so much in like the self-help and like even just not even self, just like learning and stuff and like self-education of like learn this in 10 seconds in a
Yep.
week, in one day.
Yep.
And the reality is you're never going to pick anything up that way. And
Hmm.
part of meditation, I think that people forget is it's a habit. It's like forming a habit. It takes a long time and the more you do it, the better you get at it, yes, but it takes a long time. And they say like it's a lifelong practice without an endpoint or a final attainment. And I really like that idea. Like it's not about any goal. It's just something you're going to do because it's good for you. It helps you maybe be more present in the world, whatever. But I think that's important. Like, and they even say like each moment offers a fresh start. So you have to continuously return to that beginner's mind. in order
Hmm.
to, and that's why I like that idea. The Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind is a very good title
Yeah.
for the book
Yeah,
too.
absolutely. The practice is the most important part because that's when you get the experience of it and the actual learning of it. And another thing that he mentioned in there was he said 1 day a week is enough. He talked about how people go like way overboard in the beginning, how they give up everything and they think they're going to join convents and monasteries and all this stuff. And he's like, 1 day enough, 1 day a week is enough. Just, add it to your regular routine and then you can develop from there.
Actually, I was always thankful when I was when I studied philosophy in undergrad, when my professor had one of his friends who was a Buddhist come in and teach us how to meditate one class. And he actually, at the end of the class, he said, he's like, now try this like once a week. He's like, and if you like it or you find that like, it's helpful, he's like, then try maybe doing it more later, once you get comfortable with
Hmm.
it. I think that was good advice because like I've done it here and there throughout my life rather than like I probably would have given it up if I tried it every day, to be
Yeah,
honest. Like, because I would have gotten frustrated.
absolutely.
But if you do it once a week, it's easy, you forget that frustration kind of by next
Yeah.
time.
But frustration's even part of the process.
Yeah,
And
it
like,
is.
yeah, that's kind of a waypoint that you're doing it correctly. Another thing that he said is don't try too hard. Straining gets in the
Yeah.
way. It's not about efforting, it's about sincere, effortless presence.
This is another thing that's hard for people, I think, to pick up though, is this idea of like effortless effort kind of, that
Hmm.
idea of like the double negative there of you're not
Hmm.
trying, you're just doing it for the sake of doing it. I think that's a
Yeah.
hard concept for a lot of people to adopt.
There was some book that I read a while ago that talked about this, where he was talking about all this meditation stuff. And it wasn't until he surrendered that he actually, because he was studying brain waves. Oh man, I
Ah,
wish I could remember the name of it. He was studying brain waves of like very long-term meditators and people who were just getting into it. And he was measuring himself while he was doing it. And he tried a whole bunch of different things. And finally, he got to a point where he was just like, you know what? I just give up. And all of a sudden, his brain hit that same frequency as like the experienced meditators. So yeah, there's a whole thing about that. I forget what it's called, but you can
what's
probably look
funny?
it up somewhere.
One of my best times meditating was actually I was getting an EKG.
Hmm.
And it was like I suffered a fall or whatever. So it was like all these tests and all. And it was like an hour long. The woman was doing it. And she wanted me to get to like, she was like, try to like fall asleep if you can. Cause she was trying to get my brainwaves for, I guess, like
Yeah.
just find like base, whatever. Yeah. And that was like, I just started meditating. And like afterwards, I didn't realize like it took long because she was like, you kept almost falling asleep and then you'd come back. And I was like, and I guess because I was like, that's what I was doing. Yeah. It was
Uh-huh.
interesting. That was a
Ah.
really good experience though. Cause it was all dark and quiet. It's a good
Yeah,
time.
that's pretty rad.
Yeah.
I do remember the name of the book. It's called The Open Focus Brain.
Oh, nice. I'll
Yeah,
check that
and
out.
there's
Never
there's
read
some
that.
videos on YouTube too where they just guide you through it because it's all about recognizing the open spaces. So like the space between your eyes, the space behind your nose, and like all these different spaces. And so doing that somehow gets you in the same
Well,
brain wavelength.
it's funny because I think we forget that like we name all these things. We make all these things into something. We give them meaning that is totally fabricated, right? Think about it. We make things important like that you really want those sneakers or whatever. That's totally made up. That's
Hmm.
you making that up and maybe some influence from outside. So like
Hmm.
when you really start to think about it, like breaking that down can really free you too from all of this stuff because you start to kind of see it for what it is, but it takes a while. And you're fighting your kind of natural way of seeing the world, right? Which makes it hard to
Hmm.
get to this place, I think. I also like too, they also mentioned like daily life of mindfulness. So like, that yes, you're going to meditate maybe once a week or whatever, but that also throughout your life, everything you do, every action, whether it's like doing dishes or like mowing the lawn, whatever, it's a chance to embody awareness and to be aware and to practice mindfulness. And I think
Hmm.
that's a really good thing too, is like trying to throughout the day, trying to kind of like be mindful of what you're doing and
Yeah.
do it mindfully. Yeah.
Even when you're suffering. Because that's like one of the I think that's a lot of people get into meditation because they're suffering and someone says, "Well, you should meditate." And granted, yes, but at the same time, no, it's like the worst time to do it because all you're doing is suffering. But if you are
Yeah.
suffering and you're meditating, all you can do is notice this is suffering. This is suffering. This is suffering. And so, yeah, that can be a useful thing too.
Yeah.
So I think this is a great book for beginner meditators because it's like no frills. It's got tons of content, and it's just like a nice step by step. And maybe Zen meditation isn't your thing, but I still think there's so much to learn from it
Yeah,
that's
I
great.
can't. Yeah, this book's it's amazing. I can't remember if I think he just wrote it. I don't think it was like lecture notes that somebody put together or anything. But
Yeah.
either way, it's super accessible too. That's the other
Hmm.
thing. Like I think that was one of the things that blew me away with this book is it's like a lot of times when they write books that are meant for like a large, wide audience, they lose a lot of the content in
Yep.
doing that. And this, he does not. It's like the Buddhist ideas, the concepts, all the important things from Zen are really presented in a way that are digestible and that
Hmm.
makes sense. And I really, yeah, it's I couldn't recommend it enough.
And you can listen to it in your spare time on 1x speed on YouTube in 2.5 hours. Like,
Yeah,
that's
it's a
crazy.
short book.
Yeah.
It's not long. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Cool. So there you have it. Zen mind, beginner's mind. Never lose that beginner's mind. This is the Existential Stoic Podcast. Until next time, I'm Randy. That's Danny. I'll see you later, Danny.
Later, Randy.